Citations, elements, and containers. Elements make the container, make the citation. So a part of MLA is a very structured system of elements that make up a container. So it's really important to kind of understand what those elements are, so you are more likely to just be able to do your citation without having to look things up as a reference. So the element is a required piece of information that is needed to make a citation complete. So we have authors, we have titles, we have contributors, version number, publisher, dates, and location. All of these things are required for a citation to be complete. So to go into more detail about what these elements are, the author is the person who created the work that you're using. So whether that's music, a blog, or a movie, it's whoever is the person credited for creating that work. The title of a source is like your chapter title, an article title. It could also be the book title or a web page title or website title. The idea is that this is the title of the work that you are using. So a title of a container that might make it seem confusing could be like the whole book title, the journal title, the website title. So say you have a chapter that you use in a book. You'll have the chapter title and the book title. Same with an article. If you have an article that comes from a journal, you'll have the title of the source, which is the article title, the title of the container, which is the journal title. And you'll list them right next to each other in your citation. Version is the edition or a version of the work. So if you are doing a book and this is the second edition of that book, the version that you want to put into your citation is second edition, so that people know which edition of the book to get. The number, this can be a little bit confusing. It does not mean page number. It means the volume or the issue number that help identify the very specific publication that you're pulling this information from. So say you're working with an encyclopedia like Encyclopedia Britannica, and it has several volumes that go across like an alphabetical kind of orientation of terms and definitions and things. And the volume that you're working in is M through P, and that is volume 6. That means that you'll want to make sure that whenever you're doing your citation, you add volume 6 to your citation so people know that. If it's a journal, a lot of times they publish in volume and issue. So you would have volume 1, issue 3, or something along those lines, whatever it is for that article. Publisher is the person who publishes what you're using. So for like a book, that might be like HarperCollins, or that might be Scholastic, or whoever it is who's in charge of publishing that book. In journals, a lot of times journal publications, the name of the journal is the same as the name of the publisher, like they're owned by the same group. Sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes you have a journal that has one name and is published by a larger group that publishes many journals. So you want to make sure that you look to see about that information for the text that you're using. The publication date is the date that the work was published. Location can hold more than one thing. So say that you have this as a physical book, that's going to be a page range. Say you have this as a book on your Kindle, but it has the original pagination included, you're still going to do a page range. Say this is a journal article that you found online in EBSCOhost or one of those other search engines. You're going to be using a DOI, permalink, or UL in place of the location because that is how you got to it, unless you also have the original page range available. So containers. So we went through all the elements. A container is the object that holds all the elements together. So like we had earlier, our box of donuts, and the container is the box and the donuts are the elements. So just to kind of go through that in a more formal way, a container contains all the elements we have discussed. The container shows you what order the elements are in for the citation and what punctuation each element has. So if you have a source that is like an article that you found in a database, there are times where you will therefore have a nested container. So you'll have a container of elements that has to do with the source itself, the actual journal and journal article. And then you'll have a second container that will describe where you found it, like through JSTOR or EBSCOhost or ProQuest, and will give the link and information for ProQuest of that search result that led you to this item. So they call those nested containers when you have more than one. The second container that you're using generally will not have all of those elements filled. It just has the elements filled that are relevant to the citation you are doing. And that sounds really confusing, so we'll look at an example here in a bit. This is just to help you visualize what these containers look like and what's inside of them. So just kind of think of it as a table where you have your author, your title of the source, title of container. Contributor is one that I added in here for this because sometimes you have an editor, and I wanted to make sure that that was something that we talked about. Version, number, publisher, publication date, and location. So what does this look like when you're putting it all together? So your citation on your Works Cited page will have all of these elements put together to look like this on this side here. So you'll have the name of the author, your titles, if there's an edited by, an edition, publisher, date, and page range. To have another kind of example to show you how this works. So we want to find where our elements are. So I kind of zoomed in on what that article looked like. If you don't remember, I'll go back real fast. So we have this article that's up on our screen, and we're going to go through this to show you what elements are where. So as you can see, up here at the top we have the author, who is Alexander Hutton. We have a title of our article, which is Literature, Criticism, and Politics. The title of the container we see right here, this is the journal name, 20th Century British History. We also have our volume information, issue information, our publication date, which is here, and our location. So we don't have a version because it doesn't have an edition. And here we find that our publisher is the same as the journal article title. So say we found this article in a database, we can see that from the picture I showed before, it was through the Oxford Academic, which is also its own location of where this is found. This is where you would use your secondary container or a nested container. So we see that for our second container, we need to say that it's part of the Oxford Academic, which is here. We also see that it has its own URL, and we take that information with us to add to the final citation. So this is what we had before, and then we add on the new information from the second container so that it looks like this. And you can see the new stuff here is in blue. So now there's two areas where we have italics, where it's the title of a container. So this is the title of the journal, and then this is the title of the website where we found that journal. So that's why we have the two. And then you have two locations, which is the original page range from the article, which we were able to see on the website, but then also the location of the website itself of where we found that article. So, not that that wasn't really confusing on its own, there are such things as supplemental elements. They supply extra information about a specific aspect of your citation that would be required for someone to know in order to find that piece of work. So if you have something that's extra, like an original publication date, or that there's more than one contributor, like there's an author, but there's also an editor or a translator, or there's other generically labeled sections like introduction or chapter 6. All of these things would be coming after the title of the source. If you have a completed container worth of elements, but there's still more that someone needs to know in order to find this information, like the date that you accessed it. Like say you're going through a database and they update that information regularly, but they keep an archive. People will need to know what version of the data you looked at the day that you got it and wrote about it. If there is a medium of publication that's important, like say that you found this as a PDF download online and it's going to be paged different than a physical version, this helps people understand what pages really look like for the person who did the paper. But also if you have other information like this was a dissertation, this had, multiple publications, if it's a part of a series, like say you're talking about one episode of X-Files, but there's still the whole series of X-Files, you might have this as something you put at the end of a container. Do you have to use supplemental elements? No. Unless you have information about a source that you're citing, which is absolutely required for the reader to know in order to find the source. If there have been multiple versions of a source published and there are differences between each publication, then you may need to provide that extra information to ensure that people know which version they need to look at to see the information that you pulled for your paper. All right. Well, that ends this part of our video, and I will be back for the Works Cited page in the next one. Thank you.